Nneka, the Little Witch. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison had waited 3 long years before the cry of their first child, Nneka, filled their home. She was a strikingly beautiful girl, dedicated to God just like a devout parent. Mr. Harrison, a bank manager at a prestigious organization, ensured his family lived comfortably, while Mrs. Harrison, a secondary school teacher, instilled discipline and knowledge in young minds. But unknown to his wife, Mr. Harrison had fought battles long before their marriage. Born into a lineage of darkness, his family had worshipped strange deities for generations. Every male child was doomed to failure, poverty their only inheritance, while the female member thrived. But he had chosen a different path, one of light, breaking away from the chains of his ancestors by giving his life to Christ. What he didn't know was that the covenant binding his bloodline was ancient, so old that even his newfound faith had not completely severed its hold. The first sign of trouble came when Nneka turned 6. By then, they had also welcomed a son, and life was seemingly perfect. But everything changed when Mr. Harrison's mother came to visit. From the moment she stepped foot into their home, she was filled with both shock and disdain. Never before had a male from their lineage built such success, and it unsettled her deeply. A son had defied the order of things, carving a destiny beyond the reach of their gods. This was unacceptable. She marks her displeasure well, showering Nneka with affection, gifts, and sweets, tokens of love, or so it seemed. Unknown to Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, each item had first been laid as an offering before her deities, seeds of destructions disguised as treats. Months after she returned to the village, the consequences began to unfold. Mr. Harrison lost his job under inexplicable circumstances. His once thriving career crumbled overnight. The family plunged into hardship, surviving only on Mrs. Harrison's meager salary. The landlord threatened eviction. Everything that had once been stable was slipping away. Then came the request. Grandmother wanted Nneka to come stay with her in the village. She promised to enroll her in school, to care for her as her own. Struggling under the weight of their problem, Mr. and Mrs. Harrison agreed. Nneka would visit only during school vacations. But what awaited the little girl in the village was beyond anything they could imagine. The first night, Nneka barely got 2 hours of sleep before her grandmother shook her awake. "Come, my child," she whispered, her grip firmed. Still drowsy, Nneka obeyed, assuming it was time for school. But instead of leading her to the kitchen or bathroom, Grandma guided her out of the house. The night air was thick with silence, broken only by the distant hoots of an owl. Hand in hand, they walked past the backyard, down a narrow bush path, deeper and deeper into the thickets. Nneka's heart pounded. She wanted to ask questions, but the look in grandmother's eyes kept her lips sealed. Then they arrived. A cemetery. The graves stretched before them like silent watchers in the dark. Grandma stopped at a particular spot and exhaled deeply. "Nneka," she began, "you are of age now. It's time to meet our true family." She pointed to a patch of land. "When I die, this is where I will rest, just like those who came before me." One by one, she pointed at the tombstones, calling out names, whispering their legacies. Nneka shivered. Fear gripped her tiny frame. Then grandmother turned to the graves and spoke into the void. "I have brought my granddaughter, Nneka. She will take over from me, as is our tradition." Accept her. Guide her. The air thickened. A sudden gust of wind howled through the trees. Nneka whimpered, stepping back, but her grandmother held her firm. Lie down, she commanded, pointing to the grave next to hers. Tears welled in Nneka's eyes. Grandma, please, lie down. Her voice was no longer soft, it was an order. Trembling, Nneka obeyed. The earth beneath her felt unnervingly cold. Then the unimaginable happened. The grave beneath her opened. Before she could scream, it swallowed them both whole. Darkness, silence, and the beginning of a journey into an unknown realm.